In this stream, I'm going to try to show deploying this repo from a free Azure account. So here's the repo. Here's my free account where I've got the free Azure account with a free subscription. And then here's the README that talks about what settings you need to do in order to deploy from a free account. So here I've got the repo in VS Code in a deb container. You could also open this up in GitHub code spaces so that you don't have to set up any environment locally at all. So now that I have this open, the first thing I'm going to do is log in. So I'm going to do AZD auth login, use device code. And that gives me a device code. And it opens up this URL for device login. So I'll open that up in this window that's logged into the account. And I need to grab this code and select the Azure free account and say, yes, I'm trying to sign in. And it says I'm signed in now. So I can go back to VS Code and see that it says I am signed in. And the next thing is I'm going to run azd new in order to say I'm creating a new AZD deployment environment. And this is basically going to be the resource group that's got all the resources in it. So I'm just going to call this free rag. And now I'm going to go through this README and run the commands here. So the first thing it says is to use the free tier of app service. And it says that there is a limitation where you're only allowed a certain number of free app service instances per region. And I've also seen a limitation where just some regions won't let you do free tier. So we'll keep that in mind when we pick our region later. Next up is using the free tier of Azure AI Search. And that also has limitations. So only one free search service across all regions. So that means we can only deploy one. I don't have any deployed right now because I deleted the previous ones. We won't get to use semantic ranker, which is sad because it's really nice, but you know, it's not on the free tier. And it does not support keyless access. So it is going to use a key vault to store a key instead. Next is using the free tier of Azure Document Intelligence. That is what extracts data from the PDFs. That does have a limitation where it only scans the first 2 pages of each PDF. So given that our sample data is longer than 2 pages, we're going to instead use the local PDF parser. So I'm going to set that. Next up, there's turning off Azure Monitor, also known as Application Insights. It's actually a really low cost thing, and it might even be free with the free credits. So I don't think you necessarily need to turn this off, but I'm going to do that just to show I can. And then the final suggestion is that we can disable vector search, and that would save us money with our OpenAI calls. But we're going to use OpenAI.com calls anyway. And I think that vector search adds a lot to an application. So I am not going to disable vectors. So we're going to skip that. And then we also need to see here, because we're deploying from an Azure free account, and Azure free accounts cannot sign up for Azure OpenAI. So we do need to use an OpenAI.com account. So we can go to this README and it says we need to run this. Then an org. I don't have an org on OpenAI, so I just need to get the key. So I need to go back to my OpenAI account and create a key that I'm going to destroy later, since you're going to be able to see it. And that's why keys are bad, but we have to use them here. And put that in there. And now I'm going to run AZD. Now I can run AZD up. So let's give that a go. And I've also set a budget in this, so only like $10 a month. So I don't accidentally go over, and I use very, very little budget of that. So you will have to spend some money on your OpenAI calls, but it's pretty minimal. Okay, so AZD up asked me to select an Azure subscription. I only have one, so I just select that one. And now it selects an Azure location. I'm going to go with East US because that's where I've had the most success with the free tier of app service. So let me find East US. That worked for me last time. So hopefully that's going to work for us this time. This is, you know, can be the most Difficult thing about provisioning Azure resources is that they're not all available across all regions. And so we might pick a region and then find out that, you know, a particular resource is currently having capacity constraints in that region. And so then we have to switch regions for everything or across the board. So what it's doing right now, it is packaging up the code. What that means is that it's taking, right now what it's doing is actually taking the JavaScript code, which is all these React files here, these React TypeScript files, and it's compiling them. And then after it compiles them, it compiles them into JavaScript files and then puts them in this static folder, and it's empty right now. So it has, oh, and now it just went in there. So you saw the assets popped up. So these are the compiled JavaScript. And next step is to copy the deployment package. So what it's doing is taking the whole backend folder and making that into a zip file. And that is a zip file that it's later going to send to app service. So it's just doing this packaging as a first step. And this can take a little bit of time because it's got to get everything and compress it all. So we'll wait for that to finish. Let's see, I can show you that Azure.yaml is what declares the kind of order of operations for AZD app. So it says there's this pre-packaged step, and that's what does the npm build of all the front-end files so that they end up in that static folder. And then we have a pre-provision check here, which looks to see if it should set up authentication, and we are not using authentication, so it skips that. You can see here it says it skips authentication. And now we've moved on to the actual provisioning, where it's going to make the Azure resources, and it asking us to enter a value for the OpenAI location. It doesn't matter what we select because we are using openai.com OpenAI. So you can select whatever. It's just going to end up ignoring it. I wasn't able to figure out a way to not show that prompt when you're using openai.com. So select whatever, and it just shouldn't matter. Okay, so now it's moved on to actually provisioning the resources. It does it all based off what's in the infra folder. So there's this, there's the parameters, and then there's the main.bicep, and it basically declares all the Azure resources that need to be made so that this whole application can work. So we've got stuff like app service, OpenAI, search service. Of course, in this case, we're not going to make the OpenAI host, OpenAI service. So you see, we've made the resource group, search service, key vault, app service. We can also check this portal link if we want to get an even more granular view into what's going on. So let me open it up over here so we can see what's happening. All right, so you can see it's actually, it's deployed quite a bit. It didn't manage to make form recognizer because it says only one free account is allowed for account type form recognizer. It may be that my previous account needs to be purged. So sometimes when you delete things, it does a soft delete instead of a hard delete. So maybe I just need to do a hard delete, but it shouldn't matter because we are going to use the local PDF parser. So I think hopefully it's going to be okay that the form recognizer or document intelligence that failed. We'll find out soon. I could also check to see why. Yeah, so it does say that only one free account is allowed for account type form recognizer. So that means there is some, there's some existing one here, but let's see if that ends up mattering, yeah. Let's see, current cost 0. That's what I like to see. Let's see if we can find deleted. So it's the manage deleted resources. Aha. So yeah, this is what happens with form recognizer. I did a soft delete, but not a hard delete. So I would need to delete these entirely. So do a purge of them. And that did end up failing the provision entirely. So let's see, is it going to, I'm going to click on this again. Okay. All right. So I think it's going to work if I do it again. Let's give it a go. It is going to repeat some work we did before. So that does take a little bit of time. So it's going to redo the packaging and then and check to see if it needs to reprovision anything. We could have also run just AZD provision to just do the provisioning part. That's something you can do. So AZD up is what I often use because it does everything. It does package, it does deploy, it does provision. But if you want to, you can do just AZD package, just AZD deploy, or just AZD provision. Okay, so it's building those modules again. Now making the package. Okay, but we can start exploring what was already made while it's doing that. So we're going to look at the resource group. So we can see in this resource group, it did make an app service. It made a search service. I made a key vault and made an app service plan, and it made a storage account. So it was able to provision quite a few of the resources. And this was all from, from the free account. So this is free tier and this is free tier. And I guess these are also all compatible with free tier since it let us deploy all of them. And now we can see that it's going to attempt to provision everything again. So we'll go here, take a look at this progress. This should be faster because it's not what happens is that the portal can tell that we've already got a lot of stuff deployed. So it can go really quickly through the stuff that already exists. And then the stuff that doesn't exist, like, this is the document intelligence form recognizer. It was able to do that. And it looks like it did go through this time because we got rid of that. We purged that soft deleted resource. All right. So I think that's going to go through. We can see that it was made. Very good. So we just need to wait for it to finish up. Now it's updating the secrets and storing the secrets in the key vault. And now it's just setting up some roles so that we can have keyless access to some of these resources. So it's getting very close to the end of this deployment. So the portal now says that it finished provisioning all those resources. And we can look back here and wait to see once AZD realizes it's done. It's usually just a little bit behind because it has to poll the portal and ask, are you done yet? Are you done yet? Are you done yet? So we'll just wait for that. All right. And now it's running the post-provision hook. And so the post-provision hook, we can see it here. It's what runs our prep doc script, which is our data ingestion script. So it creates a virtual environment in scripts. This is the .vm environment here. And it's going to install all the necessary Python requirements into that package. And that's what it's doing right now. And then it's going to start data ingesting. So it's going to ingest the PDF files that it finds in here. And it should use the local PDF parser because that's what we told it to use. And it looks like it's going already. So we can see as it goes along, each time it processes it, it does make an MD5 file, which is the hash of the file, to keep track of the fact that it has processed that file already, so that when we run this in the future, it's not going to reprocess files it's already seen. So you can see that it, extracts a PDF, it extracts the data out of it, it splits it into sections, into chunks. It uploads the whole PDF to blob storage. And then for each of the sections, it computes the embeddings. And that's what this output is here. And then it stores all of that into the index. So it's going through each of the files and doing that. Let me open up the index so we can see what it looks like in go to the index and see what we have so far. Okay, we've got a few chunks already, so we can see the content and we can see the embedding. We can also see that where it came from, the source file. And this is It is done with the data ingestion. So now it moves on to deploying. So when it says, when AZD talks about deploying, AZD is meaning deploying the code, the application code. So what it's doing is taking the package that it made earlier, that package with app backend in it, which has both the Python and the JavaScript. It's taking that package, that zip file, and it's sending it to app service. So it's going to send it to app service. App service is going to see it. App service is then going to start building a container, a Docker container for the environment. So it's going to install the Python requirements according to this requirements.txt file, and then actually start the server using server start command that we told it to use. So we can keep track of that here, but we can also look in the portal. So I'll show you the portal since we're going to wait for it anyway. So we can go to app service and go to deployment center and go to logs. And what you can see is that it did get the push zip file, so that's good. Now it's running Oryx build. So Oryx is the name of the build system that app service uses. And because we've told it to actually do a build, which means we didn't upload our full Python environment. We instead only uploaded the Python files and the requirements.txt, and Oryx is going to build the full Python environment. So it detects, the version of Python. It's like, okay, we're using 3.11. And now it's going to start running a pip install. So it's actually going to install all the Python packages on there. So this is why it does take a bit of time, because it is setting up a Python environment. So we could keep on, refreshing and taking a look at that. You can see it started at 2:10. It often takes between 5 to 10 minutes. So I'm just going to sit here and do a lot of stalling as I wait for it. Let's see. So now we can see it's made more progress. So it did actually install all these dependencies here. So we're making good progress there. Other parts you may want to know about for app service is, let's see, we can look at the configuration. And this is going to have all our environment variables. These were set by the main.bicep. So if we look at apps service, web.bicep. Okay, let me find it. Here we go. Okay, so this is where we set all the environment variables. So if you needed to add another environment variable, you'd add it here. And then we can see them all set here. So there's lots and lots of environment variables that control exactly how this works. So lots of these are just making sure it knows, what OpenAI, what OpenAI am I using? You're using OpenAI.com. What key vault am I using? What's the search service? What's the storage container? You can see here we're using OpenAI instead of Azure. So all this stuff is set as environment variables. So this can be a good thing to check if you are having some weird configuration issue. You could make sure that your environment variables look the way you expect them to look. It's always a nice place to look. There's also an SSH. You can do the SSH only once your container has started. So it's probably too early to SSH right now. If I try right now, I'll probably get an error. Let's see. Yeah, it'll say connection closed because the container hasn't started yet. So once the server actually starts, then you can SSH, and it can be handy because you can SSH in and you can poke around. Now I'll go to advanced tools. This one is useful for getting logs, especially if you're not using Azure Monitor. If you're using Azure Monitor, usually it's easier to go there. But if you're not using Azure Monitor, then you're going to want to download the logs from here. And so we can say download a zip. And that's collecting all the logs related to this app server. So then I go to my downloads and see the most recent zip. I download lots of these zips. And I can open this. And then the one that I always care about, actually, it doesn't even exist yet because it's so early days. So usually what I do is I look at the default _docker.log, but that doesn't even exist yet because that container hasn't started. But that's the one that would contain our actual server start logs. These ones aren't really as exciting, but you can look at them if you want. I usually don't look at these ones. That's kind of interesting. This is the one that's for the build. So if you wanted to see the Oryx process, it looks like it's there. All right. So now let's go back to look and see how our build is coming along for app service. Look at logs. Okay, so it does say success. And if we go here, we also see success. So that's interesting, because if we go to the website, it may not work yet. So I'll go to it just so we can see if it works yet. And it'll be pretty cool if it does. But a lot of times, even if it says success, it's not going to work for another few minutes, because it is still warming up the server. It's still starting up that container. We could go and look at the log stream and try to see what's happening in real time. It's can be a little hard to watch the log stream, because sometimes things are kind of out of order. But we can try. So this is where we sometimes can see errors, but sometimes it's just confusing because it's out of order. So now what I usually do is I just wait a few minutes. And this is where I stall some more. What we can do is, let's see, go to the logs and we'll see when it actually finished, so we can calculate how long it might take. Oh, it actually might have finished. Look at this. All right. So it's up. Is it working? Moment of truth. What does a product manager do? I should open the net request too. So it's going to send out the request. And remember, what it's doing is it is searching Azure AI search to get matching documents. And then when it gets those matching documents, then it's going to send them to the GPT 3.5 model, which is on OpenAI.com. Now, this is doing it all on free tier. So we're using free tier app service, free tier search service, and free, well, not free OpenAI, but OpenAI.com. So if we are seeing worse performance, it may be due to using the free tier of app service or the free tier of search service. But we do, okay, now we get the result. But keep in mind, like if you are seeing low performance, you can, take a look at what actually, where's the lag? Is it in the actual request to the app service backend? Is it the request to the search call? Is it the request to OpenAI? And determine if there's anything you can do about it. When you are using free tiers, you tend to be, competing with others for that free tier. So that's why we don't ever recommend using it for production. But that could mean a little slowness. So here we got the answer, and we can click. Let's see if we get our citation from the blob storage. We can see the PDF is loading. There we go. And we see the supporting content. We see the thought process. Okay, great. So yeah, it did all work with all the, the modifications we made. It does mean that some of the settings we had to turn off. So if we look at developer settings, we don't have the option for semantic ranker because it's just not supported on that tier. But we can still do a hybrid search with vectors and text. So that's great. We can still do all this streaming and all that stuff. So there you go. We were able to deploy from an Azure free account. All right. Bye.